this recording in progress. Excellent. Thank you again for attending the Grimes Bridge Road Corridor Improvement Project virtual public information meeting. We are going to be presenting similar information as to what was presented in our in-person meeting on April 27th. We had a great turnout for that. We had about 50, 60 people come out and talk to our staff and elected officials about this project. So if you did come out to that and you're back today, you're going to hear a lot of the same information. We absolutely invite you to please stay and participate in this. But if you want to just go online and kind of take a look at the information that you may have seen at that meeting, or if you want after this meeting to go online, we have a page set up at roswellgov.com/GrimesBridge. And one of our staff members is going to be showing you that page, talking a little bit more about that. A few housekeeping notes. You are in listen-only mode right now. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box, also known as the chat box, but I believe it's listed or labeled as the Q&A box. We will try to answer as many of the questions as we can during our time today, but if we don't get to you, please know that we have your email, so we will reach out to make sure we answer your questions. This is being recorded, and the recording will be posted at that roswellgov.com/GrimesBridge webpage. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Shin. She is our transportation project manager, and she is specifically the project manager for this particular project. So Elizabeth, take it away.
Thank you, Karen. So like Karen mentioned, we do have a project website for this. roswellgov.com/GrimesBridge is the shortcut. You can also find it by navigating the website. This is what the website looks like. It has my contact information should you have any questions after this meeting about this project or just Roswell projects. So this Grimes Bridge Road Corridor Improvement Project is part of our T+2 project list that was voted on by the voters in November 2021. So we are kicking off this project, and the purpose of this meeting and the meeting that was on April 27th is just to get public input of what you want to see on the corridor. And the corridor, the project limits we're looking at is from Oxbow Road on Grimes Bridge, just south of the Adult Rec Center, down to the Dogwood Road intersection, and then down Dogwood Road to Riverside. And Riverside Road, that's where the Riverside Road T+2 corridor project will tie in. And then it will look at tying into then the GDOT Managed Lanes project over State Route 400. The corridor improvements that we're considering and wanting to kind of get your feedback on are different traffic calming elements, pedestrian and bicycle improvements, or intersection improvements. And we do have a survey linked on our project website that will be open until May 13th. That is available under this traffic calming measures tab. So if you have feedback or if you have specific concerns along the corridor, please fill out that survey, because that's what we're going to use to create a concept and a design for this project. So otherwise, the project website does have, it goes over some of the things that our consultant's going to go over, and then it has information about the 400 Managed Lanes project. That's a separate project from this project that's being managed by GDOT and handled by GDOT. So if you have questions about that, please go to their project website. And then it also has frequently asked questions as it pertains to this project. And this web page will be updated throughout the project lifespan. All right, I'm going to pass it over to our design consultant, VHB, and Matt Thompson is here online with us, and he's going to go over some of those traffic calming devices that we would like to get your feedback on the corridor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Thompson. I'm with VHB. We are a design firm that works for the city. We've worked for the city for about 10 years now. And I'm going to present some information, as Elizabeth said. This is the same information you can find online. All the information is there on the website, but it's the same information as well that we presented at the meeting last week. But just to kind of go through some things so everybody kind of understands and has an opportunity to maybe ask questions here while we're on the phone together. So initially, Elizabeth gave a little background on the project, but one of the reasons this is in the T-SPLOST is really to kind of address the concerns of the residents along the corridor in anticipation of the State Route 400 express lane projects, which will connect Grimes Bridge over 400. Not only will it give that connectivity to the express lanes, it'll give that connectivity kind of east-west through that location. And again, we just want to, these are recommended tools that VHB and the city have kind of talked about. But as far as putting them in the corridor, we don't have recommendations where they would go yet. That's part of this meeting, is to get the feedback from the group here. And as you can see, we want you to look through the boards. I'll talk about the options. And then you kind of have the local residents identify what they think is feasible on the roadway, what they would like to see on the roadway. So right here, I hope everybody can see my screen. Elizabeth, if you could give me a thumbs up, you can see, okay. So as you can see, how to read the boards, and I'll go through them. It's basically the device name, which is what they would construct at a certain location, depending on what the residents or the input from the public would like to see. And then we've got some photos of an example, and then where that location was. Most of the locations we found were either in the city of Roswell or within city and municipalities adjacent to Roswell. And then we kind of give a definition of what that device is. I'll run through those and try to give a little more specifics as we look through the photos. And then the benefits. This really is discussing how does this reduce speeds? What are the benefits of putting it in? And then the information source is typically where we got that from publications, whether that was a federal highway publication or IT. And then the cost range. So you'll see kind of a dollar. We'll see things that are in the higher range of cost, and then things that are lower range of cost and pretty easy to implement. So. All right, so one of the first ones we wanted to draw here was Meeting Islands. And you can see this photo is at Eves Road in Roswell. And it's just a raised island along the center line can reduce speeds. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, it can narrow down the lanes. And number two, it also adds a kind of a geometric change to the roadway sometimes, where people see it, and not only a visual cue, but you have to slightly make a turn to go around it. So it is a traffic calming device in that way. And as you can see, the benefits, it will decrease vehicle speed, especially when it's used in conjunction with some of these other items you see below, pedestrian crossings. And it'll also give a shorter distance for the pedestrians across, with sometimes if it's wide enough, we can get some refuge for them. One thing I want to clarify in this toolkit, what we're looking at, this is not a 12 to 14 foot median to provide left turn lanes for vehicles as well. This would be a very narrow 8 to 10 foot median that is strictly there as a visual cue, and also potentially providing some of that crossing and facilitate the additional signage for pedestrians that may be crossing. So when you see it here, please know that this example too is really representative. It's a very narrow median with the raised curbing. It is not a wide, large median that would widen the roadway out significantly. And you can see this cost, we're showing a low range to a mid-range cost, and that really is more related to how many locations can go in. It's not a high cost to put in one, but if you're doing multiple, it can run up in the mid-range of cost for these projects. The next one there is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is sometimes referred to as RFB. And this one's at Saddle Creek Drive. And you can see there, we do have the raised median as well in the picture. This one is a kind of pedestrian activated device where it's 2 yellow signs. And I'm sure most people have seen these. When you push the button, it has the yellow flashers that flash up to warn vehicles approaching that pedestrians are crossing and so they will slow. Again, not only the signage, but the poles and everything that's up, this will draw drivers' attention to the crosswalk, even if there are no pedestrians. It is a visual cue. Then when you actually have the presence of pedestrians and the flashers are going off, that's when it's the visual cue to actually stop so they can cross safely. The third one on this board is the pedestrian hybrid beacon. And this one's slightly different from the RFB in terms of this one actually has a red flashing light that is, again, activated by a pedestrian when they push the button. This one's over Alpharetta Highway. So when the button's pushed, the red lights flash, then they actually come to just a pure red light warning vehicles to stop, and they'll go back to flashing, and then they basically go off and vehicles can continue on. Again, this is a big visual cue for drivers. The red light, when they see it, drivers understand to stop. So it'll reduce those conflicts between pedestrian and vehicles. Same thing if you have the median, you have several visual cues in one place. And these two, because of some of the equipment that goes in along with it, sometimes you need a little bit of right of way to put poles in the actual mast arms. They're in that mid-range of cost. So. Our next device here is curb extensions. And this one's at Vice Road and Johns Creek. And as you can see, it's really just where the curbing of the roadway is extended out a little bit into the travel lane. It does two things. It will narrow the travel lanes. It also, when you might use it in conjunction with the pedestrian crosswalk, it gives a little more refuge for people on the side to stand, and also makes that distance that they're actually crossing the roadway shorter. And you can see some of the benefits. Narrower lanes will slow the vehicles down. Again, a visual cue. It does provide a visual cue of a slight change in the roadway as it's tightened up, geometry of it. And then again, if you have this curb extension, it will help pedestrians get a little bit out there and be more visible for drivers approaching. So if you do it in conjunction with the crossing. This is very low cost because again, it's just some concrete curb and gutter. You might do an extension in certain locations. And then we've got a mini roundabout. This is you can see the picture of a recently constructed North Coleman Road mini roundabout that City of Roswell put in. I know I assume if a lot of the folks here are City of Roswell residents, then have gone through a roundabout in the city. You'll control circle intersection with one circulating lane. In the case of a mini roundabout, the center island is very small, and it's just a slight raised curve throughout, so the trucks can just drive over it without damaging. But again, it'll at much slower speeds. This is some of the benefits. It's usually more operationally efficient than stop-controlled intersections. It does reduce speeds of approaching vehicles, and the horizontal deflection, even though smaller than the single lane roundabout, it does mitigate some of those angle crashes where they are right angle clashes and not your T-bone collisions. And the next one there is a single lane roundabout. This was at Chapin Road in Roswell. Very similar. In this case, the center island is much larger, counterclockwise flow around the central island. It has really the same benefits. Sufficient can reduce crashes. It will reduce speeds in the approach with some of that horizontal deflection. It'll have more horizontal deflection than a mini roundabout. The footprint of the mini roundabout is always going to be much smaller. You can see on the single lane, you'll have a little bit longer of these islands on the approach and a little more deflection for cars coming in. These are both in the higher cost range, but there is a pretty significant difference. The mini roundabout is going to cost less than the single lane roundabout. But the way we laid these out, these really fall on a threshold above all the other things in the toolkit here. But there is a difference between the cost between a mini and a single. And then here's some other items. I think this is the last board we've got. As you can see, we have curb and gutter. I know that might seem strange. We got a picture on Eames Road, but on the corridor now on Grimes Bridge, there are several locations where you do have curb and gutter, and then you'll have lots of gaps in it. So this is one option to actually construct curb and gutter throughout the corridor. And one thing it does is it's a roadway design element. It provides a vertical barrier between the streets and the properties. It is a visual cue that you typically are in a more urban/suburban area, which you would see lower speeds. The benefits, it helps define the roadway. Again, those lower speeds when you ever define roadway and appears narrower in the lane widths, which will ultimately help kind of encourage drivers to slow down. A lot of it is visual cues. And this one, like I said, there is a lot of existing curb and gutter on Grimes Bridge already. So this is a very low cost item to put in because a lot of it is going to be either repairs to damaged curb and gutter or adding curb and gutter where it is currently missing on Grimes Bridge Road. The next one is a lane width reduction. And this is Willio Road. This example is, a little different in the case of Grimes Bridge because Willio is a rural shoulder. But what this would do, it's reducing the width of the travel way probably to approximately 10 feet on Grimes Bridge. They are currently about 11.5 feet. Narrow lanes really promote slower speeds. They'll decrease the distances where pedestrians would be crossing. But it is another cue when the roadway gets a little tighter. Typically, vehicles will slow down because they can feel shifting in. You would see on Grimes Bridge in particular is, when you narrow up the lanes, it wouldn't be a matter of taking the curb and gutter in all locations. It would really be moving the striping in. But the facilities would leave a little bit of shoulder between the edge of travel way and then that curb and gutter you've got to the outside. But it's really a striping cue now that the lanes have gotten a little bit tighter. And the last one we've got is textured pavement. This is a picture on Holcomb Bridge Road. You can see the crosswalks themselves they're a red brick color, then the asphalt pavement is actually imprinted with a kind of a brick pattern. So when cars travel over them, they kind of feel a difference. It's not necessarily a rumble strip, but it is different than typical asphalt pavement. You can see the modifications to texture and color. You can include pavers. Stamped asphalt is typically what we have done in the past. It holds up better when it has the connection to the rest of the asphalt on the roadway. And this can do several things. It can capture the attention of the drivers, increase their alertness between visual cues, sometimes sound cues when you go over textured pavement sound different. The audio cues. And this can be done in different ways. Here it's shown at crosswalks. This is one option. It's when you do this in conjunction with those pedestrian hybrid crossings, those RFPs, it's another visual cue. You can also have it where it's much wider leading up to the crosswalk. So again, there's a cue to slow down well in advance of the actual crosswalk sometimes. And this is medium cost because you do have to do the construction and labor to put in some of that imprinted asphalt pavement is pretty intensive. So. And lastly, we did present this map at the meeting, and this really just is showing that, for the corridor in the 2019 Roswell Bike and Ped Plan, there were recommendations to add bicycle facilities and pedestrian improvement facilities to this corridor, as well as Dogwood Road. And then the State Route 400 connection that is being done by GDOT, that actually does propose to have a multi-use trail within their project limits, which would come and at this point would tie into the signalized intersection of Dogwood Road. So that was just something we wanted to point out to people that, you know, we're out here, the city's looking for recommendations and to get feedback from the public on what they would want to see on Grimes Bridge to help out with some of the traffic calming and ease some of their concerns. But at the same time, there are things out there in the plan for Roswell to do for improvements in the facility. One thing I wanted to cover real quick before I hand it back over to Elizabeth, there was a couple items that we did not include in those traffic calming measures. One of those was multi-lane roundabouts. Multi-lane roundabouts would not make sense for this corridor. We are not proposing to widen out the lanes. Multi-lane roundabouts are typically for a higher traffic volume threshold, as well as approaches, a multi-lane approach, which would not be the case on Grimes Bridge. Nowhere did we recommend or want to propose adding left turn lanes or widening the roadway out for additional through lanes. The traffic volumes that we're seeing just don't warrant that. The 2-lane facility should continue to work at an appropriate level of service. Traffic signals or stop signs. These do slow down cars, but they're not really considered traffic calming measures. The side roads along this roadway typically do not warrant traffic signals. There have also been studies that show that traffic signals, and when I say signals, I mean headlights, yellow, green, yellow, red. There's been studies that show those don't actually slow down vehicles. A lot of times those can promote speeding in situations where you have traveling public trying to make the green light. So essentially speeding up to make the green light, whereas some of our roundabouts that we proposed in the toolkit to look at, those are situations where the approaching vehicles do have to slow down because of the geometry, because of the visual cues, and it's just a matter of to go through the roundabout safely. They are typically in those much lower speeds, and you're not going to find vehicles that typically speed up to make the roundabout in terms of when they're trying to make the green light when it turns to yellow. So, and then the last thing that we didn't consider were speed bumps or speed tables, vertical deflections. These are not approved for the use in the city of Roswell. Vertical deflections can affect the operations and response time of emergency vehicles and actually impose an increased risk to motorcyclists and cyclists that might be using the corridor. So those are just 3 items that I know sometimes come to your mind immediately when you think of traffic calming and slowing down traffic, in particular the speed bumps and the traffic signal. But when we look at this, those aren't really either not warranted for the corridor or just they're not actually going to provide the traffic calming measures that some folks think they would. So I think I covered most of what we have. I'm going to hand it back over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, do you want to take over? Do you want me to keep sharing the boards?
Yeah, if you could just keep this screen up. I know we've been getting questions coming in. I'd like to kind of generally address some of them. What also is not included so the purpose of this meeting and the public input right now is to get an understanding of the concerns and identify certain locations that the city and VHB can look at to develop some solutions along the corridor. One of those, like Matt said, some of the solutions that we're not considering as far as traffic calming, we're also not considering widening the road, like as in adding another lane to the road. That is not something that will come out of this concept development. And then we're looking for permanent solutions and not necessarily temporary ones. So that's why you might not see that like speed feedback signs you might see on some corridors where it tells you what speed you're driving along that corridor. That's a temporary traffic calming fix. Also legally changing, we had a question that came in about changing the speed limit. That's a legal change. You have to go through the state, and just changing a sign out is a temporary change. So we're looking at more permanent changes to the corridor, and trying to stay within a similar, it's still gonna be one lane in each direction. And so it's permanent solutions that we're gonna look at. The feedback we're getting from this month, from April and May, is gonna go, we're gonna discuss and we can provide recommendations to the mayor and council, hopefully towards the end of the summer, as far as what the public wants to see and what we feel would be good solutions along this, and taking a look obviously as far as bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Those we can definitely get to. And then the next step would be to develop a design along this corridor, and then that's when we would look more into the impacts as far as it comes to, I know Greg's been answering questions, as far as it comes to property impacts or anything like that. That is what happens in more the design phase, and right now we're in gathering input and then concept development. So if you have other questions, just drop them in the chat box. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Matt, if you're reading through the questions. But
I know this is the law, the 30 miles per hour and enforcing with police. All I would say is that changing the speed limit is not what's going to slow people down. You know, you're already a 35 mile per hour roadway, and I think some of the grades coming down just from Dogwood and going in the kind of western direction towards Oxbow, dropping the speed limit is not necessarily a solution. That would be a very temporary thing, where some of the other things we're trying to put out there would be permanent additions to the roadway and attempt to calm traffic.
so if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. If you'd like for us to go back to any of the slides that we've talked about or go back to the project website, just let us know. If not, the project website will be updated throughout concept development and into design. There is a survey, like I said, it's open until May 13th. So if you have specific concerns as it pertains to this corridor along Grimes Bridge and Dogwood, please be as detailed as possible. And you can give us some feedback on what you'd like to see.
Hey, Matt, there's a question that just came in, you know, talking about, you know, they think the traffic calming measures are missing the mark. The real problem is too much traffic on a narrow 2-lane road. Could you talk a little bit maybe about, you know, the kind of the capacity of the 2-lane road and where the traffic is today and what the traffic projections are in the future?
Yeah, so you know, the 400 managed lanes, that project looked at volumes, and then we also looked at some growth volumes with the opening of Oxbow Road, as well as the new connection over 400 that would essentially allow access from Grimes Bridge to get over to Holcomb Bridge Road without having to use, basically over to Old Alabama without having to use Holcomb Bridge Road on the western side of 400. We did look at traffic. I think the traffic now is approximately like 8,000 ADT is the volume now. With the opening of this 400 managed lanes access in Oxbow, it would roughly jump by about 3,000 ADT into the 11,000 ADT range. And that was in that open year of, I think we looked at 2028. But even in 11,000 ADT, that traffic volume still doesn't warrant additional lanes. And even when you look out to like 2048, which is the design year for 400, it doesn't grow significantly up into that kind of 17 to 20,000 ADT range you need to start adding lanes. So there is there's a significant room to still allow it to be a 2-lane roadway. I can understand, we did hear a lot of residents talk about, in the mornings, in the rush hour, it is difficult to get out. And I think some of those issues come with the backup of traffic at the schools. So one issue there, one thing to look at would be, could we improve access at the schools, circulation at the schools? But it's not, the volumes are not going to warrant adding a lane, as I talked about earlier, or adding left turn lanes. The 2-lane facility should operate at a level of service that would require basically an appropriate level of service.
Thank you, sir. There's another question, a little bit about additional traffic just when the Oxbow Road intersection opens. We don't anticipate that intersection contributing a significant amount more traffic, vehicles than what's already there now. The current detour for Oxbow is for people to go up to Norcross. So if anything, Norcross is filling the brunt, and then people are just coming down Grimes Bridge. So we don't anticipate a significant increase in traffic once Oxbow opens up. There is a question about extending the lane at the schools to offset traffic during the rush hour. That's actually a good question, and there's definitely going to be some coordination with both schools. What I can tell you with the Swift School, they already have a proposed, I would say, redevelopment plan for their site, specifically with the parking and the flow of how vehicles enter and exit their property. That is supposed to be under construction, possibly even as early as this summer, and that would impact how their frontage operates a little bit. And I believe the Cottage School has done something similar. They've changed the flow within their property, but that's something we can definitely talk about with the schools as we get into get into the concept design and development and preliminary design. But if that is a serious concern, I mean, we would definitely welcome that on your comment card.
Greg, do you want to jump back and answer the one about why the city picked the road? I mean, I think that's just a simple, the city did not pick this road. That's more related to the GDOT project.
Yeah. So as far as this road, we did not pick where the South Bridge that GDOT has proposed was connecting to. They actually initially showed connecting to Big Creek Parkway, which is the new proposed road north of Holcomb Bridge Road that connects Old Alabama and Warsaw Road. That is a T-SPLOST 1 project. That was always, the concept and design was always done with the fact that it would never connect to Georgia 400. And that was meant as an east-west connector for Roswell residents. When GDOT initially showed connecting to that, the mayor and council at the time told them they did not want a managed lanes connection to that bridge. So GDOT looked elsewhere, and this was the other place that they came up with. And the mayor and council at that time were okay with this location. This is, I think it's one of the southernmost like exits or entrances for the managed lanes system. Is there any chance they could reconsider the Big Creek Road? Honestly, I don't know. GDOT is already under procurement again for the managed lanes project. And they have an approved environmental document which details the current impacts along Georgia 400. So I'm not sure that there's availability to reconsider that. I know we definitely heard that at the meeting last week, but if that is one of your biggest comments, I mean, we would welcome you to submit it, and that's something we can always funnel back to the current mayor and council and see if there's anything they want to do with that. So as far as Matt, I don't know if you can talk about the question with the backup. I think they're basically talking about Grimes Ridge backing up from Dogwood to essentially Oxbow. Are you able to talk about that question a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we can see, you know, when you get up into 2048 in the design years, and even a little bit past the open year, the 400 managed lanes, there is backup on Grimes Bridge in the peak hour. And just so folks understand, when I say the peak hour, I'm talking about typically a range from like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Those 3 to 4 hours where the heaviest traffic volumes are. But even looking at those in that 11,000 ADT range, the level of service on the roadway and the level of service at certain intersections was not failing. So that's what we look at. And, I can understand there is backup, but when we look at some of that, when we look at some of the operations on our end, of the volumes out there, it's still, the roadway is still functioning at an acceptable level of service. So yeah, again, I understand there is an increase on Grimes Road, but when we look at the traffic, the level of service is not in a situation where you have to significantly change access on the facility and intersection types that are there now. So I see Jonathan asked again, it did go up, so it does go up to about, the connection is going to increase the volume by about 3,000 ADT in that open year.
And that is taking into account the GDOT managed lanes project.
Yeah, when I'm saying connection, I'm talking about the connection, the managed lanes project that connects Grimes Bridge essentially to the eastern side of Sarah 400. The standard for level of service, it's based on delay on the roadway, and it is laid out when you get over to a B over C, which is like the capacity of the roadway. And I saw you mention that earlier. It is ranking from basically an A to an F, and anything above E, so A, B, C, D is still an acceptable level of service. And again, it's based on the delay on the roadway in that peak hour, or in those peak hour time range.
So so what's I know you looked at the intersections. I guess, have we looked at the corridor, Matt, as far as the whole level of service? Is that?
I'll have to go back and look, Greg, but I know we're looking at, a lot of it was the intersection.
The intersection.
So, but again, I understand like some of these comments are coming that saying, delay on the corridor in the peak hour. A lot of that too is, I think, related to backup in the peak hour for the schools as well.
Yeah. And to be honest, the intersection at Grimes Bridge and Dogwood, it operates okay now, but that intersection will be upgraded as part of the GDOT will be upgrading that intersection as part of the managed lanes project, and that should operate a lot more efficiently in the future, which should help reduce the backup, further down Grimes Bridge back to Oxbow. Yeah, and there was another question about the pre-pandemic, traffic counts. What I can say, GDOT's analysis was all done pre-pandemic. Even analysis is done now. There are adjustment factors for the pandemic that GDOT is utilizing. And so that's all trying to be taken into account in any traffic analysis we do.
That's right, Greg. When we did our traffic counts separately, we did do a pandemic adjustment factor, which actually bumped them up. I think I want to say around 1,000 to 1,200 ADT. So.
Any other questions for the good of the group? If not, I think we've pretty much handled most of them. Matt, you were just asked, you referenced multiple options to improve safety. They're asking you for, I guess, what your opinion is the best option.
it's hard for me to give that because I don't want to sway people. I think all the options there are good options that have shown to reduce speeds and be traffic calming devices. So I think ultimately what we want, that's why I'm trying not to sway opinion, because I don't want to tell folks do a single lane roundabout because that's the most expensive, and a lot of people on the corridor may feel like that is, they'd rather see the city spend money on construction elsewhere than to do something that hard. So again, the things we presented and discussed with the city to present to the public, they're all very good options to reduce the speeds and be traffic calming devices.
And all that information is available on the project website. And we do have, if you're interested in learning more than what is on our website, we have the references source. So if you want to go to ITE or Federal Highway or GDOT's website and learn more about mini roundabouts or RFPs or anything like that, I understand that, you know, we're asking you for your feedback and you're not necessarily all engineers or anything like that. But if you want more context as far as what the research shows or what other uses show for speed and safety changes, that we do have those linked on the website if you would like to learn more about that.
And I see, and then there's another, reducing speed, amount of cars on the road. Again, I just reiterate the traffic volumes don't warrant adding additional laneage. And if we were looking at that too, that would be significant property impacts to try to widen out this road for additional laneage. And I know just if a lot of residents are on this call now, very familiar with some of the houses on the roadway where they sit. It'd be very difficult to do significant widening of Grimes Bridge if that were needed, because it's just there's significant drop-offs in property locations just adjacent to the roadway, particularly on the north side of Grimes Bridge, where a lot of the properties sit much lower than the roadway. So widening out for things like that would cause significant impacts to adjacent properties.
Yeah, and kind of feeding off that, Matt, there was another question about timing on when the city would approach a property owner if we infringe on their property. That'll be much later in the process. Like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, the next step would be to put some concepts down based on the feedback we receive now. And then ideally, we're going back out to the public in the fall and getting feedback on the concepts. And then once that is done, we'll start the preliminary engineering process. And at that point, we'll start to fine tune, the right-of-way limits, easement limits, and that sort of thing. And then we'll get appraisals completed on any property that is impacted. And then we would begin the negotiations with those property owners. So it's, as far as talking property acquisition, we're still, year plus out from that at this point.
And to answer your question, yes, as far as there are pedestrian and bicycle improvements that are going to be considered. As of today, there is an existing sidewalk on the southern side of Grimes Bridge. And we are looking at possibly making that a multi-use trail on the southern side of the Grimes Bridge, and that will connect into the Riverside corridor project down that hill on Dogwood. So we are looking at on what side of the road we could build a sidewalk or wider sidewalk on Dogwood Road to connect to the Riverside one, so that there would be continual connectivity from the Grimes Bridge Park all the way down to all the Riverside parks. So.
Yeah, I understand the comment, not one additional lanes. But it's hard to, with the connection, I don't think the city wants to encourage additional traffic, but in preparation for that, understanding how to keep this corridor safe and safe for the residents that live along it and use it. That's one of the big things that one keep in mind.
Okay, so I think we've answered most of the questions at this point. We appreciate everybody's time and appreciate the dialogue back and forth and the feedback. And we encourage you all to go to the city's website and fill out a comment card for this project. And we appreciate all the feedback.
Once again, that survey closes on May 13th. So you do have some time to kind of go to the website, read over the material, put together your feedback. And the survey is found on roswellgov.com/GrimesBridge is a project website. And then the traffic calming measures section of that website will have the survey linked, and it will have all of the information that Matt presented to you guys.